Okay, so this will be the third video in the series that I've been working on here. This is the masculinity and femininity through the houses. The purpose of the series is, once again, to illustrate just how these energies work within these signs, why these signs are given the designations that they're given. It's not arbitrary. That through better understanding how these energies work within the signs, we get a better understanding of some base idea of what is masculine, what is feminine, and why we need to readjust our modern understanding of these two modalities to better understand behaviors within our world, and also from the context of behaviors being appropriate or inappropriate. So the last sign we left off with before was Scorpio, which means the first one that we are entering into with this one is Sagittarius. Keep in mind that all of these signs for the last 6 signs are collective focused. There's an us component versus the me component of the first 6 signs. Sagittarius is masculine. It's fire. But this is, opposite of Gemini, where Gemini is about you and your immediate surroundings, you and how you interact with your immediate surroundings. This is, and also specifically your lower mind, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so it's about how you process information, how you take your thoughts and vocalize them. And in order to have a reason to vocalize something, someone has to be around to hear it. So there's this. Whereas in Sagittarius, it's related to your higher mind. This is ruled by Jupiter. It's a sign that's concerned with truth. And how you obtain truth in this sign is you debate. You go beyond your local setting, and you leave. You go to other places. You go to foreign places as an attempt to understand things that you might not have understood before. Truth is obtained through the debate, you being able to formulate not just a thought now, what you're thinking in base sentences. Now you're formulating ideas. You're formulating higher ideas. You're beginning to piece the world together in Sagittarius. Now it's masculine because you're still the one doing the work. You're the one that's having to take a look at everything that you've been given, everything that you've researched, that you've observed, that you've taken into yourself, and you're doing the work to piece it together and make it make sense. And then you go and you give your hypothesis to others, and they will take that in. They'll rework it. They'll see what's wrong with it, what the holes in the argument are, and they'll say it back. They'll speak it back. And in this, because you're constantly having to take it from within, whatever you pull it, everything that's coming in, you're reacting towards. In a debate, because it's lively, it's going back and forth. But as you go back and forth, you get closer to the truth. The house associated with Sagittarius is the 9th house, and the 9th house is where in the traditional context, it's where you find your universities. Foreign travel is in there, sure. It's I'm not quick note. I'm not a major fan of the foreign travel concept. That 9th house is here, so we're going on a trip and it's going to be fun. No. Does it happen? Maybe. But when you're leaving, your area, it is supposed to be able to connect with the higher mind. Otherwise, I personally feel you're wasting your time in the house. But that's neither here nor there. But the traditional sense is universities, scientists, professors are found here. And these are the people that are trying to ascertain truth. But because it's masculine, you have to be able to withstand. You have to be able to withstand ideas. If you don't like what you're hearing, you have to come up with an argument against it. Quick side note: this is part of the reason why the introduction of safe spaces in college institutions flies in the face of this masculine concept. You know, it's safety, protection from ideas, protection from, you know, even if those ideas are dangerous, no matter how well-meaning you are in terms of trying to create these safe spaces, that's a feminine concept. You know, and specifically, it's feminine related to the fourth house. I mean, that's, you know, if you're looking for protection from anything, you go home. So, you know, so again, I mean, it's about things that are generated within yourself, expressed outward. It's the biggest component of it, and you can see maybe to a light extent, you know, when with regards to you know, how university is supposed to work. Oh, real quick, religions are also found in the ninth house as well, because religions for the longest time was associated with trying to achieve its highest truth through kind of seeing what's beyond. You know, we can go into a different video series, maybe talking about the prior age. The age of Pisces had the ninth house in the cusp of Scorpio. You know, so our higher-minded institutions became really hyper obsessed with, you know, with spirit, you know, in matters of the occult, and you know, that's where we were at for the past 2,000 years. Now that we're entering into the age of Aquarius, now you're starting to see the ninth house is on the cusp of Libra. So again, that's the our higher institutions are focused on social justice, as you're seeing a lot of in terms of, you know, trying to achieve social justice. But of course, you know, like I said, my criticism of those institutions, that in an effort to achieve social justice, you have to create safe spaces. I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing as much chaos come from those institutions at this point in the time, like the critical race theories and whatnot that kind of come out of it, where, you know, certainly it's you know, there's a theory there, but it hasn't really been fully vetted out, and usually criticisms of the theory are kind of hand waved away. Although keep in mind, in the past, ninth house institutions are, you know, they've been liable to do such things in the past. It's because it's associated with Jupiter. Jupiter can be a bit arrogant in knowing in what it knows. You know, where it kind of sits back and says, "I already know everything. I don't need to deal with your criticisms." You know, but again, maybe that's a you know, that's a masculine failing, you could say at that point. But I digress. So, but anyway, whatever these institutions are able to figure out in terms of this higher mind, this higher truth, it naturally is given to our 10th house institutions, and this is these are our governments, our you know, you could argue big corporations, and the highest, you know, the highest governments of the land. It's ruled by Capricorn. This is a sign that's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is a sign it's called the Great Malefic, and indeed it's not a pleasant planet. Anyone who tries to, you know, this is why people get excited about Saturnian things. I might, you know, raise an eyebrow. At its worst components, Saturn deals with fear, and you know, restriction is a big thing. But it also has to deal with actual, real truth within your reality. You know, whereas Jupiter might be sort of your higher truth, you sort of have your earthly truth, so to speak, with Saturn. And you see that with the principal sign that he rules in Capricorn. It's an earth sign. It's feminine. As you might have seen with all of the earth signs, it's feminine in the sense that it is, you know, primarily concerned with the outer world. In this case, it's the outer world in terms of your status, you know, your worldly success. It's also, you know, it's a sign opposite of Cancer, whereas Cancer is usually associated with the mother. Capricorn would be associated with the father, which is also why the house associated with Capricorn in the 10th house is also known as the house of men. You know, constantly, because I have read some, some interesting books that literally try to argue the opposite because they've observed the opposite. But part of me wonders the reason why they're observing the opposite is partially because we do live in a time where everything is a bit flipped in terms of power. But more often than not, it's what I've seen is Capricorn is the father, and Cancer is the mother. Um, this is an interesting house, though, because your status is bestowed upon you. You are giving a service. You are giving something to the world of value, and if the world finds it valuable, you receive. You receive your status. You receive not so much income. Income doesn't occur here. It occurs in the 10th house, but you do tend to get, what you're known for. Your notoriety or otherwise. And always remember with femininity, you give to receive. And you're always receiving more than you're giving. That's how femininity is supposed to work. Whenever a feminine sign is not getting more than it's receiving, or I'm sorry, we're not receiving more than it's giving, it tends to get very unhappy pretty quick. But I would say Capricorn probably is one of those interesting ones because, again, people can get it confused with again, the big heart, gushy heart thing that people try to get assigned to the earth signs. I tend to hesitate from, especially Capricorn, because its overall orientation is sort of, what do you have to offer? If what you have to offer is really good, you're going to get a lot more in return in terms of your status and what you're bestowed upon. But your orientation within that house, your expected individual orientation, is ironically, I would say, more male-like. But that's just my own thought in the matter. I would love to hear what people have to say. But I will further say, there is this big question. Is it really the mother that's in the Cancer? Is it really the father that's in Capricorn? I tend to really believe that most of what I've read in the past has been that. But there have been a few books I've read that have said the otherwise. But like I said, that's an interesting thing of debate. So anyway, let's say you are the type of person, you're climbing the ladder of Capricorn, and you get all the way to the top. And if you're doing Capricorn correctly, it's Saturnian, so you're always keeping in line with the law, and you're always you're always having to give in order to receive, but you're always having to keep it going. The next project, the next thing. A lot of leaders who are doing well at the top, who are staying in line with the Saturnian principles, who are well respected, who are diligent, and who are forthcoming. There's a bit of my partner said this about a few people that that she's known who are really successful. There's a bit of them that kind of looks at the average person, who technically is the beneficiary of all of this work, and goes, you know what? I kind of wish I were just a normal person. And this is where the sign of Aquarius becomes the next one, because because the reality is the sign of Aquarius and the 11th house is associated, real quick, before I jump into anything else, actually wealth gains. Wealth gains from the group. Wealth gains through being a part of groups, that you've been able to actually, ironically, get more in the long run than necessarily what you put in just by being associated with a group. However, it's more of an equal component, and that's an idea I do kind of want to develop a little bit more. But regardless, that's the natural flow. It's like you just kind of want to be a normal person, because being a normal person is actually a little bit easier, is the idea, and why you start to descend. The 10th house is the highest part of the chart, and the 11th is is the beginning of the descent back into the individual. 11th, the Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn. This is sort of the egalitarian component of Saturn. It's masculine. Now, this is masculine because of its relationship with Leo. Leo, as we talked about before, is a sign of sovereignty. Which is again ruled by the sun. And, this is where your ego comes into full fruition. And the ego is technically considered to be fallen. The sun is considered to be fallen in this sign, but that doesn't mean that the ego, it just goes away. Aquarians are well known as being, the interesting individual that you can point out in the group, the eclectic one, the one that's that really kind of electrifies or shakes things up. That's, and people like to say, well, that's because Uranus is, is the modern ruler of Aquarius. I'm not a fan of that. I don't care too much about the outer planets and their rulerships, even though there's something there. I still think Saturn is the primary ruler of this sign. Now, what makes it masculine is primarily because of, in order for you to be a part of a group appropriately, you have to choose that group. That group has to have your individual mindset in mind. This is the sign where it's all for one, one for all. And in the modern context right now, we tend to think that the self gives to the group, and if the group has to sacrifice the self, so be it. That's not how that works. The group is not interested in sacrificing the individual for the sake of the collective. That doesn't work that way in Aquarius. Because in the end, when you start to do that, you remove the individual factor of it. And when you remove the individual factor of it, you remove the group identity in its entirety. Because these groups are created of individuals that collectivize. It's another reason why it's masculine. You're finding like-minded people who share like-minded purpose in life, and that's what gives you the power in Aquarius occurs from that, not from being forced into a group because of what you've inherited. So what makes it masculine is, in order for it to work appropriately, you determine. You have to figure out who you are, what you represent. And of course, this is also found in the prior signs, obviously. But once you define these aspects of your individuality, you find like-minded individuals and you collectivize. It's very slow to do that. Saturn is a slow, restrictive sign. It requires discipline. You need to make sure that what someone says is in line with what you're all about. This is, again, the reason why the group won't necessarily sacrifice the individual, unless, of course, it's in line with the higher ideal that everyone agrees upon, right? All for one, one for all. But if you're against something, if you're sitting there watching the group go in a direction and say, I don't agree with this, then you should be able to leave the group. You separate from it, and it should be mutual. But it's very difficult to find people like that. It's very slow to find people like that. It's very difficult to verify people like that. But you have to be the one to determine that when you associate with anyone else, and again, the sun has fallen here, which is why you're not the one that's shining, you're not the one that's the center of attention, but everyone's going to notice you. Everyone's going to, ideally in the sign, everyone's going to respect what you have, because what you have is also what they have. So what you have to give, is in line with what they have to give, and it's for the shared purpose, and it's mutually beneficial. It's a beautiful sign when it's appropriate. When it's not appropriate, and it's not, you're seeing a lot of that currently, where people don't have the right idea. Kind of similar with Sagittarius, where people, get an idea that, that you can include safe spaces and whatnot. You're starting to see a bit of some of the effect of that house not behaving appropriately. You're seeing that a bit with it today, in terms of how groups are sort of like circular firing squads. People kind of answer a flyer and show up to a protest, and then eventually the protest evolves and there's rioting, and that rioting was only 10% of the people or whatever, a small portion, sure, but it's never supposed to be that easy to collectivize, because who validated, who let them there, and here they are burning the city in your name, like we had in 2020, and there's a lot of people, from those organizations that say they don't represent us, and you're right, they don't. But this is also the reason why it shouldn't be that easy to get a 1 million man march to come in and do things. But that's a separate thing altogether. Regardless, at that point, that's the 11th sign. You've gone through all of the major components of existence, and now it's time to reflect. And reflecting is something where you're reflecting on everything that was in the shadows, everything that was left behind, everything that was sort of missed. And this is the final sign in the zodiac. This is Pisces. It's a feminine sign, and again, very traditionally feminine in how we would view femininity. This is the sign associated with spirit, the signs associated with the passage of death. This is why also healing of the sick, and restoring of the sick. This is where you find hospitals. This is prisons are here because of isolation, where you're forced to have to isolate and reflect, think about what you've done. And through being isolated, at some point you meditate on what's been done. When you meditate, you receive from the universe, messages, ideas of what can be. It's also a sign ruled by Jupiter, so again, this is also about truth. This is about hidden truths. This is about truths, dare I even say, your truth. This is a reflection of all the things that have happened to you. This is all the things that have happened to everyone. In meditation, only you see those images. When you pass into the afterlife, only you know what that's like. It's a solitary, confinement. Again, femininity is to the self. It's solitary, right? And it's a very interesting sign as it is today. It's but it's a sign that's associated with the past age, the pursuit of God, the pursuit of the truth. Jesus, for example, it was the way, the truth, and the life, right? And this is also the house where you get your shamans. These are your feminine spiritual leaders, rather than your priests that would be found in the ninth house with the religion. Where it's you have a Bible to read, and you have testimony that yet you can take into consideration in terms of how God works, and you're trying to create a masculine understanding of what this is, that we all understand, that I can talk to everyone else, and you all at least have a set of principles that we believe. Pisces isn't about that. It's not collective like that. It's individual. This is your spiritual path. This is and it could be deceptive. When a shaman is going through a trance, and he's getting messages and regarding to you, and he's going to give you this odd, and just peppering you with images. And when like that episode of The Simpsons, when you hear the howling, wolf in the blue moon, by a pyramid, you'll know the truth, right? And you have to go on a journey to find that. And of course, through that journey, you a lot of things happen to you, and you're gaining wisdom and knowledge. And then when you have that epiphany moment, there's the wolf, and the moon, and the pyramid in the distance, right? But that was something that was extremely unique to you. It was unique to the individual and conveyed to you as an individual, and you have to go through the journey. And this is the reason why the Pisces takes these messages, takes these lingering lessons, so to speak. Because again, it's still ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is also known as, in the Vedic mindset, guru, teacher. And that goes back into Aries, your new identity, your new sense of what you're all about, and what you believe, and what you identify with. And so it's a beautiful sign. It really is. It's misunderstood. It has its downs and rows, like all of them do. But I hope this series kind of gave you a good understanding of of these concepts. And I'll be looking to develop something else in the future, but for now, that's it, and I look forward to your feedback.